Hi everyone, welcome to Azure User Group Sweden. Hi Håkan.
Hello, hi Jonah, hi, how are you?
I'm great. Happy Easter to you. It's
Yes,
Easter holiday for us here in the Nordics,
uh,
at least.
uh,
Yes. How are you
happy
doing
Easter.
today?
It's been very relaxing Easter here, so just want to
Great.
wish everyone who celebrates Easter also happy Easter wherever
Yes.
they are.
Yes, and
Mm,
everyone in Sweden got actually like extended, extended weekend because Friday is a red day, and then the weekends
mm.
plus Monday as
Oh,
well.
okay.
I think it's the same for
Yes,
Oslo, Norway,
uh,
right?
plus
Yes,
Thursday. Mm,
plus Thursday too.
yes.
Yes,
Mm,
so good, good. That's a lot. That's a lot of weekends. Yes, and it's a good weather. So it's, in my area, at least, it's starting to melt some snow. So I
mm,
hope it will be spring
mm,
very soon. Yeah. So before we get started, especially to those that are new tuning into us, I would like to take, or we would like to take our opportunity to share about ourselves. So I will start by sharing about Håkan, who is Håkan Silvernagel, who is my community leader of Azure User Group Sweden. So Håkan is a manager for big data and AI at Miles in Oslo. And he is a Microsoft AI MVP. He is very active in the community for a Norwegian.net user group. He also co-lead a community or an AI school called AI 42. And he is an ambassador of Oslo AI in the community. And aside from that, Håkan is a Microsoft certified trainer, international public speaker. So you will see him everywhere in many conferences as well. And yes, that's Håkan. And I'm very honored to have him lead this community with me bi weekly all the time. Thank you so much for being here, Håkan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonah. So I'm also very happy and very proud to present Jonah Anderson, who is the founder of our user group. She is also an MVP, a Microsoft Azure MVP, and in addition, she is a Microsoft certified trainer. She is also a mentor, a public speaker, and a podcast host. And she works as a cloud and DevOps engineer, and she is also writing a book on O'Reilly. What is that book
Yes.
about?
Yeah, it's all about Azure. I mean,
Oh,
it's about learning. The about book is entitled "Learning Microsoft Azure," and it's more focused on the fundamentals developers need to know in terms of cloud computing and developing with Azure. So, I'm writing the final chapters of that. So I'm very excited and looking forward when it is being published very soon this year. So yeah, I'm excited.
oh,
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, so it's the show is not about us, but it's about our community, and this month is very special because our speakers are our community members, and that one of them is joining us today. But before we start, I would like to share the learner badger that we have for today's session. So if you want to learn about Azure Automation, please feel free to follow or go to the Bitly link that we're sharing, Azure Sweden underscore Azure Automation. And please grab your phone and scan this Azure Heroes Learner Badger to claim it on your wallet. And we will also be having a Fika session later, and we will share the Zoom link for you. And before we get started, we in the community follow a code of conduct. So Azure User Group Sweden expects everyone to be nice and friendly, respectful to others, and seek to understand and not criticize. Be curious and open to share ideas in chat or even in our Zoom meetings. Be inclusive in your comments and questions anytime. And if you have feedback about our code of conduct, feel free to visit this link or reach out to me and Håkan on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yes. Yes, then time has come here to introduce our
Yes.
speaker. So we're very happy here to be able to introduce Saeid, who is one of our community members. So that's a special theme here for April month that we will have some of our community members coming here to present. So it's welcome to you, Saeid.
Hey, how are you guys?
Yes, very
Great. I like
Yeah,
when you said, hey, hey, like a typical Swedish, hey, hey.
yeah. Now I'm kind of combination of Swedish, English, Persian, so
Yes,
I try to
svengelska.
handle it.
So let me
Yes.
just give you a little bit more formal introduction here. So Said works as a solution architect at WeSafe, and he has over 14 years of experience in the technology field. And he has a very strong focus on Microsoft solutions for the past 8 years. And that has led him to become a certified Microsoft Azure Solution Architect and also Azure Network Engineer. And he's specializing in integration and automation solution on Azure. And he's also an expert in PowerShell and has built over 50 automation and integration solution using that tool, and has a strong passion for DevOps, infrastructure as code, and also in relation here to Azure. And Sayed is a true Microsoft enthusiast and is always exploring new ways to utilize the platform to create cutting edge solutions.
Thank
Yes.
you so
Welcome.
much.
Yeah. Welcome,
Yeah, it was too much,
Said.
but thank you so much. Thank you. It's really good to hear these things from legends like you guys, and yeah, much appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for like sharing, joining us virtually today and to share your knowledge. And it's interesting to hear that we have a PowerShell guru on stage, virtual stage,
Thank
today.
you. Thank
Yes,
you.
so today you will be speaking about Azure Automation.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
So
exciting.
yeah. So it's a good opportunity to talk about the Azure Automation, one of the most perfect solution or services of Azure that might or might not you heard about that, but it's a really good solution that you can handle your automation and automated solution that you are going to implement in your environment.
Mhm.
So it's a good opportunity for me to share my knowledge in this regard and hope everyone likes it.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for that. Okay, are you ready to rock
Yeah,
the virtual stage?
sure. Shall we start?
Yes, yeah, it looks like you're excited. Okay,
Yeah,
let's bring up your presentation here, and Håkan and I will be on backstage.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Hello to all of you guys that are watching us. So today I'm going to explain some part of the Azure automation and the features that you can use for automating your process in your organization. So as normal, I will start with this part. Håkan already somehow explained it who I am, but yeah, so I'm here to explain the Azure automation part, and I'm really honored that be a part of this community, and I got this opportunity to share my knowledge regarding the Azure automation with you audience. So for agenda, today we are going to cover these subjects for Azure Automation, setting up an Azure account, process automations, shared resources, DSC inventory changing tracking, update management, DevOps, and some security best practices. And at the end of the session, I'm here to answer your questions. So let's start. What is an Azure Automation? So Azure Automation is a cloud-based solution that allows user to create and manage workflow called runbook. It provides a way to automate various IT process from simple administrative tasks to complex workflow that involve multiple systems and services. Azure Automation also integrates with other services such as Monitor, Azure Active Directory, and some Power Platform solutions too. And it making easy to manage and automate tasks across multiple services. Additionally, it provides a way to manage and automate on-premises resources, making it perfect tool for IT automations. By using Azure Automation, organizations can improve operational efficiency and reduce human errors by automating routine tasks and process. It provides features such as error handling, resource management, ensuring that automated tasks are executed reliable and accurate. So the first step of Azure Automation is having an Azure Automation account. So by having Azure Automation account, you have access to different part of the Azure Automation. So it's part of the resource, shared resource, process automation for DevOps, for change tracking and inventory, desired state configuration or DSC, and also the update management. So the first step is creating an Azure Automation account. So in this demo, you can see you can easily navigate to Azure portal, create a resource called Azure Automation, define the subscription, create the resource group that you want, and also you can name your Azure Automation and the region that you want to have this resource. So next, you can define it's system assigned or user assigned, if it's public or private endpoint that you need. And it's basically for the security reason, if you need to have direct connection to your Azure Automation, or if it's the public endpoint that you want to define. Beside that, you have the option to create your Azure Automation account by PowerShell or Azure CLI or ARM template. So after you have created that Azure Automation account, now we are going to talk about the first item, the process automation. So in process automation, we have different items: runbook, jobs, hybrid worker groups, and watcher tasks. So in general, runbook is a documented set of procedure or instructions that describe how to perform or specify task or process. In the context of the IT automation, a runbook is a collection of scripts or procedure that automate the specific IT process or task. A runbook can be used to automate a wide range of tasks, from simple tasks or to even complex workflows that involve multiple systems or services. For example, a runbook might automate the process of provisioning a new virtual machine in a cloud environment, or it might automate the process of scaling up or down a web application based on usage patterns. So in the runbook, we have different options to implement. We have different type of runbook. So we have PowerShell, we have Python, we have PowerShell workflow or graphical workflow. So maybe you think, what is the difference between PowerShell or PowerShell workflow? So PowerShell workflows are type of the PowerShell script that provide a way to create long-running, parallel, and fault-tolerant workflow using a declarative syntax. So PowerShell workflows are designed to support automation scenarios that require coordination of multiple tasks or actions, and they can run on local or remote systems. PowerShell workflows allow you to define a sequence of tasks with each task running independently or in parallel. So you have this different type of the workflow or PowerShell method that you can implement in Azure Automation. But one more thing that I need to mention: if you use graphical PowerShell instead of normal PowerShell method, so you have to think about that using the graphical version of Azure Automation may result in slower performance compared to the standard one, because when you use a graphical, in the backend needs to be compiled from graphical to code. Also, in runbook, you can use runbook gallery. So in the runbook part, you have this option to find your specific codes by searching in the runbook gallery and find the predefined codes or runbooks that you are looking for. And these runbooks are created by Microsoft or individual person. Maybe you need to actually refactor some part of this code to be fit for your organization. So in runbook, you have more options to use. And also, not only you can use automation for the code, but also you have this option to run your script manually. And also maybe you can use a schedule task for your code to be run in a specific time. But please note that the limitation is from 1 hour to more. So the limit hours that you can use for the schedule part is the at least 1 hour. The other cool feature that you can use in Azure Automation is webhook. So for those who have no idea what is the webhooks, basically it's a URL that you can define for your Azure Automation and your webhook, and you can use that webhook to trigger your script or your automation or your runbook. And also you can push the specific parameters that you want to use in your script. So it's a really cool feature if you want to integrate your runbook with the other systems. Other than that, you have job monitoring and log and tracing. So basically, by these two features, you can monitor your runbooks if it's failed, if it's suspended, and the reason of that. Also in runbook, you have this option to integrate with Logic Apps, Power Automate, and even Power Platform, Power Apps too. So you can use the predefined or built-in action in the this Power Platform services to integrate with your runbook, and you can create a kind of solid integration between them. The other part is jobs. So you can either control or monitor each runbook individually, or you can see a list of the runbooks that you have and also the jobs that successful or completed past time. So you can easily check the outputs, error, or warnings for each individual code or runbook that you have in the Azure Automation. The other part is hybrid worker groups. So hybrid worker groups, it can be one VM virtual machine or more than one virtual machine in a group that you can push your code to those machines and make sure that these codes are running on those machines. So basically, you can use this hybrid worker group to basically run the codes on your specific VMs or machines that you want. And the good good feature that you have here is it's not necessary if you want to move the code inside your on-premise environment, because you can easily use Azure Arc feature to run your code on-premise machines that you have. And it can help you to define a kind of direct connection to your systems in the backend. So it's really good and fit for long running script. And you can use that for big automation in Azure Automation. And also it's possible to use that for either Windows or Linux. But for Linux, you have to make sure if you are using the PowerShell, you need to have PowerShell core on your Linux VM. In hybrid worker group, you need think about that if you really need to have a hybrid worker group, or you can use Azure Sandbox. So Azure Sandbox is a VM that's connected to Azure Automation backend, and when you run code in Azure Automation, you use that shared resources in the Azure Automation backend. But in some cases, you cannot use Azure Sandbox. You need to have different VM in the hybrid worker group to run that code. So, for example, if you want to run a code for services in the Azure, it's better to have it in Azure Sandbox because authentication is more simpler than the others. The latency of script resources is basically better than the hybrid worker group in some cases, and also minimizing the operation cost, because if you want to have hybrid worker group, of course you have to have a VM, or if it's Azure Arc, you have to consider about the Azure Arc actions in the cost wise. But if you have a long running script, you need to use a hybrid worker group, because there is a file shared in Azure Sandbox. So it's not optimized for long running a script, and you need to use VMs or hybrid worker groups. Also, if you use specific modules, or if you have no limitation on resources, and or if you need to use WMI scripts to elevation some access on your script. So basically, you have to consider which method is the best for you. The other option that we have here is watcher tasks. So basically, watcher task is a kind of it consists of two different scripts that you can have in runbook. One is for watching, and the other for is the trigger. So watcher task, based on the script that you have in runbook, watch the events that you define. That, for example, you have a folder that you want to watch this folder if a new file has been added, and then the runbook needs to be triggered. So watcher task doing the same, checking specific items in the runbook that you have to define, and also triggers based on the parameters and actions that you have in the watcher task in the frequency that you define, for example, every minute. Microsoft suggested that you use Logic Apps for this option. I recommended that too, because it's more flexible, and you can use gateways to watch this different method to get basically the parameters and data. So let's have a demo to see how we can create a runbook. So here we have Azure Automation named a runbook. I selected PowerShell 5.1. And it's easy. So the runbook is created. Now I have the runbook here. I have a code, which is a simple code, just getting information from Azure AD, and as an output, it shows us the number of users that I have in my Azure Active Directory. So here we have the test pane, so you can see the result of the code before you publish your code, and if it's need to be tuned or updated. So as you can see in the output, I have the number of the users that I have in the directory. So then I can publish the code, and I have this option to run the code manually here too. So as soon as you publish the code, you have the access to run it and check it. So in the status, you have a different type of the status, queued or running. And when it's done, you can see it's complete, or if it's failed, or if it's basically suspended. Also, you can see any errors or warning, and basically you can check and track if there was any problem in your code. And you can also check the jobs here. So as you can see, I had 2 jobs here, and I can easily track them. And also in the jobs, I can see other runbooks status and jobs that I had in runbooks. So another good option that we have in Azure Automation is webhook, as I've said. So in webhook, in the runbook, so I'm going to create a webhook. The webhook is a specific URL for your runbook. So you have to name, and you can set expiration time for your runbook. And please note that you have to copy and paste this URL in somewhere that is secure, and also you cannot see this webhook URL again because it's one-time generated. And when it's ready, so you can webhook URL to call the automation. So, but what we can do, we can parameterize your basically automation. So here I have created some more options here. So as you can see, I have a parameters in first line, and also I can call the webhook and get information from the webhook, like the parameters that are inside the webhook. And at the end of the code, I have an if condition if the webhook is if the automation is run with manual or scheduled task, or if it's a kind of trigger started by the webhook. So here, this is the if condition that we have here. And when I publish the code and start it manually, I will receive the normal output, which is basically for the normal goal that I have, as you can see. And also, now I have the runbook URL. So in this test, actually I used Postman to push this code to my automation account and runbook to trigger my runbook. So as you can see, it's a post action with the runbook URL and the parameter that I'm going to send by JSON format to webhook runbook. So as you can see, I have a parameter name with value Azure User Group Sweden. And when I press send, I'm back to Azure Automation. You can see the job ID, because you can track the job ID here with Azure Automation PowerShell. So the trigger is a start, and now it's running. And when it's done, I can see the output, which is related to triggered by webhook. So this is the part of the code, and also the webhook data that I can see. It's include the parameter and actually the value of the parameter. So this is the use case of the webhook. So let's go for the next part, which called shared resources. So basically, shared resources is about the all of resources that you have in Azure Automation, and you like to define it one time and use it on different resources. So in shared resources, we have different parts. The schedule task, so you can define one scheduled task, as I said before, 1 hour and more, and link it to different runbooks. Also, you have the modules, so you can have a module center for all of your webhooks, runbooks, and you can use that. But please note that this module center or module place is only for the cloud and Azure sandbox. So if you need to run the scripts on your Azure hybrid worker group, you need to install the modules separately on the VM. So if you have like 3 VMs on your Azure worker groups, so you have to think that you need to install modules on each different VMs in the groups. So you can use these shared resources for the modules in different version, like 5.1, 7. The preview version, I guess it's 7.2 now, and you can use it for different scenarios. And also you can upload your specific module if you need that. If you use a Python type of the runbook, so basically you can upload the packages here, and the support the version 2.7.12 and 3.8, and it's the option that you have basically to upload up to 100 megs of the package to be able to run on the Azure Sandbox. So also you have the credentials. So instead of having your credentials in clear text or in other ways, you can easily store your credentials in the Azure Automation credentials shared resources, and you can reuse it in different runbooks. Same for connections, and you can basically use your connections in secure way. For example, you can define Azure Service Principal here and easily use it in your code without exposing the information of the Service Principal application that you have. You have the option to have a shared resources based on certain certification. You can easily upload the certification or PFX file directly to Azure Automation, and you can use it in different runbooks. And also for variables, you can define different variables like string, Boolean, date and time, integer, or even secure string by enabling the encrypted items on string. So it cannot be able to see it easily or in clear text in the Azure Automation. So now let's have another recorded demo here. Here I'm going to define the basically demo for demo credential here, and I'm going to add passwords of the principal app that I have, and also the user ID or username. And before that, I have created another variable, a secure variable here, and added here. So in the runbook, in the old runbook that I have, I'm going to define that credential. So I easily add it into my code and add it as a variable. So then I don't need to have this part of the code anymore because I already have the credential in one place. So I'm going to add the tenant ID too as a secure variable, and it's super easy. You just need to basically define that and then use it in your code. So if I run the code again, you can see it's easily use that variables and credentials to be authenticated and used for the scripts. So that's how we can use shared resources in our environment. Next part about Azure Automation is the desired state configuration. So I was thinking that instead of explaining desired state configuration in a technical way, I can use a kind of example for that, a general example for that. So imagine that you have a messy roommate who always leaves the kitchen like a mess. So it makes you like this, so much angry. And one day you decided to enough is enough and create a set of rules for the kitchen, such as dishes must be washed and put away immediately after use, and counter troops must be wiped down after cooking. You also make a checklist for your roommate to follow, which includes of all of these rules. Now, every time your roommate uses the kitchen, they have to follow the rules and checks of the items on the checklist. If they forgot to do something, the checklist reminds them to do it over time. Your roommate learns to follow the rules automatically, and the kitchen stay clean and tidy. This is similar to how Azure desired state configuration works. You define a rules and settings for your infrastructure, such as virtual machine must have a specific software install, and network setting must be configured in certain way. Then use Azure DSC to enforce these rules and ensure that your infrastructure stay in desired state. Just like with the kitchen example, Azure DSC helps to keep your infrastructure clean and tidy and make it easier to manage and maintain over the time. So in DSC or Azure desired state configuration, you have a different way basically to as a use case actually. So you can configure, create a configuration different detection, the drift detection. So you can make sure everything is fine by your VM, or if it's need to be correct. For example, if you need to define a specific VM virtual machine name on your machines, or if you want to make sure that you have a specific package on your VM, so you can easily create this configuration and assign it to the machine. And DSC will check based on the time duration and make sure that everything is fine, or if it needs to be correct. Also for the configuration compliance, you can easily define this kind of compliance rule for your environment, or if you need to install the application and make sure those applications are always available, so we can define that. Or you can use for disaster recovery to make sure that the VMs are following the rules that you are looking for the disaster recovery and so on. Or even you can use for infrastructure as code. So for example, for AVD infrastructure as code, you can make sure that domain join will be happen by DSC. Just need to define a DSC option for your VM to push the code and make sure that VM will be joined to the domain after the creation. So in this demo, we are going to use DSC. So in Azure Automation, I'm going to add a new VM. So by connecting the VM, an agent will be installed. As you can see, configuration method is different here. So I have an option to apply and monitor, apply only, or apply and autocorrect. So for the last one, so if it's applied, if it's changed, the autocorrection will work and correct the configuration that I'm looking for. So here I selected the autocorrect, and if it's necessary to reboot, I set it that. For example, if you are going to install some specific feature or rules. And now the machine is connected and basically it's compliant. So next option is you can use gallery to use a specific configuration. For example, here I can see the domain controller config to make sure that VMs are joining to the VM, the domain, or I can use IIS configuration to install and configure the IIS automatically. But in this case, I'm going to create another configuration. It's a customized configuration. So here I'm adding this config file, which is installing the web server IIS with some specific settings. I named this configuration with same name of the configuration name file. And now the file is added, but it's not compiled yet. So I need to compile the file. So I open it and press the compile. So what will be happen here? At the back end, we have a kind of file called manage object format, which is generated by DSC compiler, which converts the DSC configuration script into a binary file that can be interpreted by the DSC engine on the target node. The MOF file contains information such as the configuration settings, the resources to be used, and any dependency between the resources. So it's still not compiled, and as you can see, it's in queue, and now it's starting, and we need to see that it's compiled successfully. So when it's compiled, you can see some more information about the file that is compiled, and as you can see, it's compiled now, completed. And if I open, I can see if there is any log, any error or warning that I need to fix if it's failed or if it's suspended. So now the compiled configuration count is 1, which means it's compiled and ready to use. So I back to the nodes, select the VM and assign node configuration. So I selected the configuration file, then OK, and just waiting. So if I refresh here, as you can see, the compilation status is pending. And after a while, and also if you can check, if you can see the IIS is not installed on my test VM. So here, I refresh the items and it's knowing in progresses. And after a while, it can be successful. As you can see, if it's not successful, you can easily track down what is the problem. And also, if it's successful, you can see which components are services compliant by this configuration. So if we back to demo machine, you can see the IIS has been installed with all of features that I have been defined in the configuration file. So that's all about the desired state configuration. The other part is inventory and change tracking. So Azure Automation push the configuration based on the agent to the VM to be installed. And the AMA, Azure Monitor Agent, sends the information to Log Analytics, and Azure Automation use that Log Analytics to show you what kind of information or what kind of data you need to see. And also you can set the alerts. So you can easily set different alerts for your configuration. So as you can see in the inventory part, you can easily see what kind of applications are installed on your VM, how many softwares do you have, and how many groups you have, or how many machines do you have in your groups. And as you can see, for example, in this slide, you can see the Google Chrome has been installed in which version and who is the publisher, some more information. And also in the change tracking, you can see what was the last change on different resources, applications, or the files. So here I can see the Chrome has been installed on that time, and also Visual Studio has been removed on a specific time. And at the end, I can use the alerts to get some more information if it's necessary by the configuration and settings that we have defined for different alerts. So update management. Update management is the powerful configuration component of automation that helps keep your Windows or Linux computers up to date, both in Azure and on-premise, by regularly scanning machines and sending assessment information about missing updates to the Log Analytics workspace. Update management ensure that your systems are always patched and protect against vulnerabilities. with update management, you can create schedule for automatic deployment of the missing updates, saving your time and effort that would be otherwise be spent on manual updates. This helps to ensure that your system remain compliant with regulatory requirement and security standards, reducing your risk of cyber attacks and data breach. So update management supports the different operation systems. This is directly from Microsoft page. It's pretty update, so you can use update management for those versions of Linux or Windows. So how to enable update management? You have several options to do that. You can use ARM template, but please note, if you want to enable by ARM template, you have to make sure about log analytics, Azure Automation first, then you can use ARM template basically to update and to create the update management. Also, you can use Azure Portal. In this screen, you can see Update Management Center preview that Microsoft basically announced it. Instead of using Azure Automation Update Management the old-fashioned way, now you can use Update Management Center, which is preview for now, but is a powerful portal that you can basically use and see what updates are missing on which machines, and you can define different policies. Or even you can use virtual machine settings. Just navigate to virtual machine, search for updates, and you can see it here. You can easily see which updates are missing, or if you need to add a VM into the Azure Update Management. Or with automation accounts, inside the Azure Automation account, you can easily find the update management and add VMs or non-Azure VMs machines. So you can use easily Azure Arc or other features like onboarding that VMs to the automation update management. The other part is using runbook. So you can use, if you navigate to browser gallery and browse gallery in runbooks, you can find onboard Azure VMs to update and change tracking at scale, which is a good script or runbook that you can use to onboard your VMs to update management by the runbook. So this is a demo how we can onboard a machine into update management. So basically, you can see what kind of updates are missed. But to adding Azure VMs, you can easily add Azure VMs based on the subscription, location, or different resource group, if it's possible. So if the VMs is accessible to add to update management. And also you can define different deployment for the schedule time. So I can set groups for that based on subscription, resource groups. And as you can see, based on this subscription, I can see the preview of the VMs that are included and the resource group, or if you can define specific tags for your VM to be part of the update management groups. Also, you can add VMs directly. So based on the agent that you already have, I can see which VMs. For example, here I can see the VMs that I have. I selected in a group, and this option, this configuration is only applied for that VM. So I have several options for the update classification. In this case, I ignore the service and tools. So also I can include or exclude specific KB or updates for the schedule test. And I can define the time recursing. So here I define like every 2 weeks, Wednesdays, the update assigned, or the the update management start checking and updating the VMs. So if I need to use post or pre scripts for the automation, I can use that. And also I can use the maintenance window time. And one thing that I need to mention about the maintenance time, if you define 120 minutes for the maintenance time, please note that the last 20 minutes, it's only for restarting the VMs. So if you have some updates that it takes more than 120 minutes, it will be updated or installed or downloaded during that 100 minutes. And the last 20 minutes, it's for restarting. And remaining updates will be wait for the next maintenance window. So here, I just defined the schedule, and I can see the deployment schedules here for all of VMs. Also, if we go to Update Center Preview, I can see a better view of the updates that I have for each machine, or if some specific update is missing. The other option that you have is one-time update. So if you need to push an update immediately, you can easily select the VM and push one update to the VM. So I can see which updates are missing on this VM. So I can select if there is any critical updates that I need to be installed. But for this option, for this time, I selected all of updates that I need to be installed on VMs if required. And also here you can also define the maintenance window for updates. So when it's installed, a new signal will be sent to VM, and after a while you can see the updates are installed, and you can get some more information inside the VM side too. So you can see history of the updates that has been installed. For example, if it's security update, it's what if it was a normal update. So it was all about update management part. So next part is the Azure DevOps. So the Azure DevOps is the, I think, interesting part of the Azure Automation. I love it. Azure Automation provides source control integration that allows you to synchronize your runbook with your source controller repository. With this feature, you can keep your automation account up to date with the latest version of your script stored in your GitHub or DevOps repository. Source control integration simplifies the process of promoting code changes from deployment to production. You can easily synchronize your automation account with different branches in your source controller repository, make it easy to move tested code to your production environment. In addition to promoting code change, source controller integration provides a collaboration feature that enable you to track changes made by different members of your team. You can also roll back to early version of your runbooks if necessary, helping to ensure that your automation environment remains stable and reliable. So one thing that you have to make sure about that when you want to create that connection between Azure Automation and the repository, you have to make sure that the path or personal access token permission is enabled in your environment, because this connection works with the path or personal access token. In Azure DevOps, also you can use organizational settings and enable the token access in entire of your organization settings. So here I was thinking to have a complete demo for all of aspects of the Azure Automation that we can have. So I've created this diagram and I've created this demo based on different part of the Azure Automation. And also I use Azure Arc. I'm not going to explain Azure Arc for now because it's not part of this session, but we are using Azure Arc machine in the Azure Automation to run a runbook inside the on-premise VM. And also we're using DevOps to Azure DevOps to push our code to the Azure Automation. And at the end, we're connecting the Power Automate to Azure Automation. So in this scenario, we have an organization that use a very old system that generating users and storing them in a local disk drive as a CSV file. So we need to sync that CSV file into our Azure directory, and based on that CSV file, we have to create users in our Azure directory. So here we have different items, and in the demo, I'm going to cover all of these items in the diagrams. So here, first, we have to create hybrid worker groups. So here, I'm going to create a hybrid group with specific name, and I use default credential. And if I add machines, I can see my VMs on Azure and also the VM that I actually onboarded by Azure Arc. So as you can see, it's connected and it's accessible from Azure environment. So I select the Azure Arc VM, and now we are going to create this connection. In the background, we already have the connection to the VM, but we need to have the Azure Hybrid Worker extension on the VM. So this process is a kind of creation of the extension on on-premise VM in my backend system. So when it's ready, we need to create a source controller connection here. So in the source controller, I'm going to add a new one. So I name the source controller for myself and select the type of the source controller. I selected Azure DevOps authentication, and now it's authenticated to the Azure DevOps. So I can see my repository and the branch that I have. And also I enabled the autosync. So every time that I push the updates, the autosyncs will update the runbook that I have in the automation. So here, as you can see, the source controller has been added, and I have this simple code. So since I already have that shared resources for the credential and authentication, so I add that part. And also I have a file in the on-premise machine in C drive, demo app folder, which is a CSV file, includes user's name and information. And by this script, I fetch that CSV file on on-premise VM and create the users based on CSV file in the Azure directory. So as you can see, it's a simple one, getting the CSV file, and for each file creating user and then return. So I'm going to push my code to Azure DevOps repository that I have. And then push to original. So as soon as I push the file for the first time, it's not going to sync. So we need to basically sync it manually for the first time. And when I synced, it's the start to getting information from repository. As you can see, it's queued now. So there is difference between full and incremental. So full means this is the new code that's going to push. As you can see, it's application demo application.ps1, and some files. And if I go to runbooks, I can see the demo application that has been added here to runbooks. And if I check the code, I can see it's the same code that I have for the inside the repository codes. So here I have another things in Power Automate. So as you can see, Power Automate does support built-in action for logic app, automation account. So you can easily call that function automation account into Power Automate, and you can use your runbook to run or get the job status or content easily. So as you can see, I have an action called create job and the other to get job with some information like waiting for a job or which subscription. I'm going to run the code or flow manually. And now the automation is working. If I back to runbook and check the jobs, I can see already a job is starting. And now it's running. And after a while, it will be completed. So I can see some outputs here, but if we back to Power Automate, and after a while, we can see, okay, we have the content. So basically, we can easily call code in on-premise by Azure Hybrid Worker Group, and we get some information from on-premise, and by Azure Automation connection to Azure Arc and on-premise, we use the code, runbook code, push the code into the VM, get some information, and then the information went back to Azure Automation, and Power Automate use that content to show to us. After that, so we can easily create different method to use that information, or if you want to call the other system or integrate it to other systems. So some security best practices. So you can use basically these are kind of recommendation from Microsoft and also some experience that I have in Azure Automation and Azure Automation runbook. So use principle for with at least privilege when you're granting access. Please don't forget to configure the role-based access control on runbooks when you want to define different automation account. When you use hybrid workers VM extension, that doesn't have any dependency on the log analytics agents, and use high privilege users or hybrid worker custom rules for users and for different operations. Also, this one is a good one because Microsoft recently announced that they are going to deprecate run as account. So if you already have any automation which works with run as accounts, please, you have to basically move it from run as account to manage identity, which is very, very safer than the run as accounts. And also use shared resources for credential certification. Do not expose your credential information or critical information to the code. And also, if you have a kind of secure environment, I really recommend that to use private link security connected to the hybrid runbook instead of having public endpoint. So those are the security best practices that you can follow, and it's really, really important that you use that. So end of presentation. Oh, okay, this slide is not the correct one. This one is better, I guess. So yeah, that's all. Hope you get some information and knowledge and get some concepts about the Azure Automation and the systems and the features that you can use, and use this service for your environment and make some automation for your organization and use it in a perfect way. So please let me know any questions.
Okay, let me show. Okay, hey, yes, thank you so much, Said, for the great presentation. I really like that you were speaking while you were like playing your demo. So it's really like you're well prepared for the demo itself. We don't have any question from the audience. Let me see. We don't have a question, but someone said hi from Alan
Okay.
Strand. So he said hi, but I do have one question. I
Okay.
actually have more than one, but I'm saving the rest for the next one. But I just want to ask you one question before we finalize the session and do our after session fika via Zoom. One question that I have is if I'm someone who is new or beginner and I want to learn about Azure Automation,
Mhm.
how would I get started? Because I know Azure Automation is a big, like it's a category in Azure world.
Yeah.
This one is just one part of it.
Yeah.
What's your advice to those that are beginners?
Yeah. So if you check Microsoft documentation Azure about the Azure automation, you can easily find that it's not only one action, it's not only one subject about the Azure automation, and there are many different aspects of the Azure automation. So uh, I basically that the way that I learned the Azure automation is I spend my time for each different items of the Azure automation separately. The main reason of that is when you using Azure automation, like for DevOps, it's a different story than for the DSC, like desired configuration. So it's really important if they want to create a kind of process automation. First of all, I really recommend that they start learning about Azure Well Architect framework, because it talks about the all of aspects of the architect of the cloud system. And plus, if you check the automation part, you can see a lot of information regarding the exactly the automation part of the Well Architect framework. And other than that, they can find some links regarding the learning path. It's not like a huge learning path for the Azure automation. It's part of some other learning paths. For example, DevOps part is related to AZ400 exam, which is really cool. So they can use that resources to learn about Azure automation more.
Great. Thank you so much, Said. How about you, Håkan? How did you find
And
the session?
I thought it was a really great
Yeah.
session. It was gave a great insight because this is quite a big topic.
Yeah, it is.
Mm. But I also had a question. Maybe you can say something general about cost, because sometimes you have a free tier, or maybe you have a number of calls that are free. Can say something about this.
Yeah. So Azure Automation, when you use Azure Sandbox, it's not that much expensive, basically, because you're using the shared resources. But in some cases, the fair shared is, some problem that you have. But if you want to use Azure Hybrid Worker, of course, you need to have a VM active behind that. But if you want to use Azure Hybrid Worker with Azure Arc enabled server, it's a different story, because for each call that you have in Azure Automation, you have to, pay a bit more. So basically, Azure Automation with Azure Sandbox, it's a good solution to having normal automation in your environment with low cost. But if you use huge automation for the Azure Automation, yes, you have to pay a bit more about that.
Well, while you were sharing your answer, I also saw here on the pricing that there are actually under pricing calculator, which we use to check. I do see here that there are some, like for example, process automation. There's like free 500 minutes.
Yeah.
And in terms of configuration management, there are also free for Azure node. But then if it's non-Azure node, then you have to pay about 60 crowns per node and other stuff. So I think our audience or learners can refer to the pricing calculators as well if there is something that is free
Yeah.
included
Mhm.
in the subscription.
Yeah, I
Yes.
can say it's a kind of cheap solution if you want to start to automate your process in your organization. It's the best solution. I have very much experience in this regard. I can say I have created more than 20 automations based on Azure automations in small to higher scales. So it's a really good solution.
Yes. I think we have a question that came in just now. Should we show a token? Let's see. Here. We have a question from Audrey. Thank you for the presentation. Under what circumstances should a company consider using this service?
She can check the basically the use cases, but based on my experience, when you want to create a kind of integration that you need to create connection between different services in the Azure, it's the amazing solution. For example, the demo that I've showed to you is connection between Azure Automation and Power Automate. So one of the examples that I can give to you, it's a kind of connection that I've created between an old HR system to Azure to be synced between the old HR and the Azure iDirectory. So it's basically a solution that you can create different scenarios in the automation idea. So it's really depends of the I cannot say that you can use it like an API connection to call or get information because it's not possible. But I would say that it's a good solution that you can define different way of the automation to integrate it with the other systems.
Yeah, that's great. I see that you got a reminder there.
Sorry.
No problem. Yes, we got our the session coming also for
Yeah.
the Fika thing. Yes, that's really great. Thank you, Audrey, for asking that question. I do have actually a few reserved for our Fika, but thank you so much, Said, for sharing your knowledge. I know that this is your one of your few public speaking virtually, so I'm very happy you did share that. And if our audience or community members want to reach out to you or ask more questions, is how can they reach out to you or connect with you?
Yeah, basically I'm super active on LinkedIn. So if they send message to me, normally I'll reply to them immediately. But of course, Twitter and my website, mctsection.com, they can reach to me and ask questions if they have any.
Yes. I did take a pic yesterday on your website, the blog that you're still trying to build. I really like the code about learning there. So if
Yeah.
you're curious what that code is, visit Aside's website, which is in our We Made Up community details. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Yes.
Thanks
Hakan.
again for the opportunity that you had me here. And it was really fun to share knowledge with others. And as I'm saying every time, every day, never stop learning. You can see this motto in my website too. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. Hakan, go ahead.
Yes. No, yes, we also got one more comment here from Ori. She was just thanking you
Yeah.
for presentation.
Yes. Yes, and
Thanks
I
a lot.
also, yeah, please, I also shared this link. So bit.ly link, AzugSweden on slash Fika, and then today's date in that format. So feel free to join us for a short mingle, yeah, after the session. But otherwise, thank you so much from us, and I hope you have a great rest of the weekend and Easter, like in a great weather
Yeah,
and fun with your family. And I appreciate all your time and share it with your friends. This is recorded.
sure.
Yes. Bye
Detsamma.
bye. Detsamma. Tack så mycket.
Tack själv.
Glad påsk allihopa. See you
Detsamma.
later.
See you later.